Hello everyone, I am Ritu Kapoor and I have recently completed my PhD from Indian Institute of Technology, Ropar, and this work which is on bloat libd detecting bloat libraries in Java applications is one of my PhD works which has been jointly performed with Agrim Pujit and my PhD supervisor Professor Balwinder Sodhi. So third-party libraries, as we all know, are a boon to programming as they provide ready-made implementations of various functionalities and are essentially used as reusable components in our source code. And by one of the studies, it has also been stated that 60% of an application source code essentially comes from third-party libraries. But as software develops, and it progresses through its various releases, a change in requirements and technology occurs. And as we set into, making some of the changes to append the new requirements, we tend to leave behind some unused references, some unused set of libraries. Now, these unused set of irrelevant libraries and irrelevant third-party libraries become the reason of wastage of CPU cycles and memory. Some of the examples are Mockito, JUnit jars. So a solution comes in the form of bloat library detector, which is bloat libd. Now, given an application jar file or third-party jar file, bloat libd helps to detect whether it is of a bloat nature, it is likely to be a bloat library or a non-bloat library. Now, how does it do that? This is what we are going to see in this presentation. So bloat libd, a brief idea of it is that the method of detection is somewhat similar to compare it with a reference set of libraries. Compare a certain library with a reference set of libraries. But this it does in an automated manner, which helps us to, save a lot of time and also perform this task in an efficient manner. Now, also, how does that comparison thing is done? That is the central idea of this presentation. Now it detects the similarity between a given library under consideration and the available set of libraries by detecting the text similarity. Uh, Now what form of text similarity does it detect? That we are going to shortly talk about. But how does it detect that text similarity? So we basically train jar2vec models using paragraph vectors algorithm, which has been proved to efficiently detect text similarity. And we train this paragraph vectors algorithm models using a large collection of third-party libraries collected from mavencentral.com. So, then how does it perform better than the existing third-party library detection tools? There does exist many, right? So we have libscout, we have libradar, we have libd, and many more. But essentially, if we see their characteristics, for instance, if we see libscout, it is based on class hierarchical analysis and it performs hashing to, hash. It basically generates hash signatures, and on the basis of that, it detects the similarity. But it uses the package names to detect those to generate those hash signatures. Similarly, libradar, if you see, it performs hashing on semantic features, again based on the package names and the directory structure. Similarly, libd, it is based on the package structure details as well. But in addition to that, it also uses relations among packages, classes, and methods, such as inclusion, inheritance, and call relations. But they all have one common limitation, which is they are potentially affected by various types of obfuscations. You may say that package name obfuscations or source code obfuscations, which is basically they depend upon such package name details or on the types of some source code. Therefore, they become one of the major uh, problem is that they become affected by these obfuscations. Now, blotlibd, one of the major novelties of this work is that we use the features which are not affected by such obfuscations. So basically, we perform semantic preserving transformations in order to obtain such normalized form of source code. So basically we decompile and we perform decompilation and disassembly operations in order to fetch source code and bytecode. Now the source code and bytecode therefore remain unaffected by such obfuscations because they are not directly available in the um, core form of the jar files, right? We have extracted them using the decompilation and disassembly operations. So therefore, our blotlibd, it remains unaffected by such obfuscations. Obviously, we also perform additional experiments to validate this, but this is the core idea, this is the core novelty of this thing. Then let's have a general idea of how this entire thing works. What are the basic tenets on which blotlibd is based on? So given a third-party library as a jar file, it contains many Java class files. So we can decompile it to fetch the source files or the source code present which is equivalent to those class files, and also we can perform disassembly operations to attain the bytecode assembly level bytecode instructions. So we perform this, and then we perform this on a large collection of libraries which we extract from Maven Central repository, and then on that collection of source code and bytecode obtained, we train different PVA models for source code and different PVA models for bytecode. Now, why do I say different models? Because obviously we need to get the best performing models. Therefore, we do parameter tuning of PVA. While training PVA, we perform various experiments to get the best performing models, to tune the parameters, to tune the number of epochs and the vectors on which PVA is based. Okay, so once we have those best performing models, what do? We obtain the vector representations. We obtain the vector representations corresponding to the source code that we had. Now, once we have the vector representations of the source code, so then again we go back to this class file, say to this jar file. It had, say, let's suppose it had five class files. Okay, just an example. So these five class files now have five vector representations corresponding to their five source codes, and now these five source code vector representations can be used as a function to get a vector representation of this jar file, which can be used to detect the similarity of this jar file among other list of files, you can say, in the same format. Okay, so this is one of the basically methods to extract the vector representations, to extract a representation of the jar file basically. And why do we use vector representations? Because it is very much efficient to compare the vector representations in terms of similarity using PVA. Okay, and yeah, now how does this blotlibd it determine whether a particular whether a particular third-party library is relevant or irrelevant? Now, if I say relevant or irrelevant, I always mean that with respect to an application. So basically, it checks with the reference list of third-party libraries. So it treats the libraries present in this reference list as relevant, and anything which is outside this reference list is treated as irrelevant. So that is the criteria used by blotlibd. Now this is basically a logical structure of the proposed system. Now this end user is the one who is interacting with the front end of our tool, front end GUI of our tool. But before that, before that we need to develop a data store. We need to develop a reference set of libraries to which we need to compare with, right? So what do? I said that we extracted a certain amount of Java libraries from third-party libraries, I would say, from Maven Central. So we developed a jar collector which crawls the different Java libraries from different software categories. We do not, just to make sure that the data set that we are developing is heterogeneous in nature, we considered around 150 software categories. We extract the different third-party libraries present over there in Maven Central, and now using those third-party libraries we extract their source code in various .class files, right, and the bytecodes. So we extract the source code and bytecode using these decompilation and disassembly operations, using the decompiler and disassembler, and this is what we store. So once we have the source code, and the bytecode, we fetch their vector representations, and the vector representations are the ones which are stored in our data store. And along with that we also store a similarity score which is in reference to a reference record, you can say a reference source code record and a reference bytecode record. So in reference to it, we also store the similarity scores. Now this entire process basically helps us to speed up the search procedure. So once an end user comes with an unseen third party library which he wants to test, the nature of which file he wants to test to check whether it is a bloat third party library or a non-bloat, okay, so the user basically uploads that file at the front end GUI of bloat libd that we just saw. And then what does it do? The bloat libd, it uses the jar2vec trainer tester to which uses the decompiler disassembler first of all to extract the source code and bytecode of the uploaded source jar, okay. And once we have the source code and bytecode, then again we fetch the vector representations using PVA, and then we fetch the most similar records over here from the data store. And then again, on the basis of the similarity that we just discussed, bloat libd decides that whether a particular source file which has been uploaded, a particular Java source which has been uploaded, is of bloat nature or non-bloat nature. So there were major decisions which were made, major design decisions that we made while developing bloat libd. First could be why to use Maven Central repository to extract the Java libraries, right? So Maven Central is basically a public host for many Java libraries, and if you see out there, there are many latest version of different libraries from different software categories. So this was a major reason why we chose Maven Central. But apart from that, the tool, it can be used. You can, if you want, you can extract third-party libraries from any other reliable source as well, and the tool will work with that also. So it is not a dependency on the working of tool. Next, why do we use decompilation and disassembly operations? So I've already discussed that because they remain unaffected from the obfuscations because they preserve the semantics and structure of the source code. So they remain unaffected from the obfuscations. Then why PVA? Because PVA, it basically gives us, it represents the source code in the form of fixed length vector representations, which is a very efficient method to store source code or to work with source code. Maybe we need to search for the similar source code or any other thing. It is a very efficient method and a fast method. So that is why PVA was one of the options. And it has also been proven, it has also been proved to be effective in computing source code similarity by one of the works which I've provided as a reference. So now, once we develop this reference data set, which contains the vector representations of all the Java files that we have, Java jars, which we have extracted from Maven Central. And as I just discussed, that we also store the cosine similarity of these vectors using some reference vectors. We now have a reference data set, and now we can check for any input third-party library. We can check its nature, that whether it is bloat or non-bloat in nature. Then what is the other important thing that we required? Now we once we have this data set, we are going to check the nature on the basis of the similarity. There arises one more important question, that what is the optimal similarity threshold by which we are going to decide that this particular Java is having a sufficient amount of similarity with the given reference dataset files. So we performed various experiments to determine this optimal similarity threshold, which I'm going to discuss in some time. Then what was the another important question was that how to check whether it is bloat or non-bloat. So again, if a particular source file provided as input shows considerable similarity with the source files present with the files present in our reference dataset, it is considered to be non-bloat in nature. So that is the criteria. Now we come to the experimental validation. So we performed two major experiments. One to validate the performance of bloat libd in performing TPL detection, and second to compare its performance with the existing tools. Now for this, what we did was we partitioned the we basically created a dataset, experimental dataset, to perform these experiments, in which we created these pairs of same and different class files. So the goal was whether bloat libd is able to mark a same pair as same or not, whether it is able to check that the given two files are similar in nature or not. And another important thing to test over here was that if bloat libd is resilient to source code obfuscations or not. So for this experiment, we used this data that I've mentioned, around 20,000 unique pairs of bytecode files and source code files were used for testing. So these are the experiments that we performed. So experiment one over here is the main important research question over here was that what is the effect of PVA parameters on source code, and what is the best performance accuracy that we achieve with bloat libd. So the highest F1 score with source code was 99.48%, and with bytecode was 99.41%. And it was observed that F1 scores, they decrease after increasing the number of epochs beyond 10, and also their performance improves with increasing the training size. So as we increase the training size, its performance increases. Another thing was that as we see in the form of vector size, so their performance basically decreased after the vector size increased beyond 5. So that is also there. So next experiment that we performed was the comparison, right? Comparing bloat libd with the existing TPL detection tools. So these were some libraries that we took in order to perform this experiment. And what we did over here was that we also performed certain transformations on the source code of these files. We extracted the source code using the decompilation techniques, and then we performed the transformations in order to check whether bloat libd is able to detect the source which has been transformed using the different transformations, in order to confirm or validate that yes, it is unaffected by obfuscations. So the novelty lies again in the use of different normalized textual representations, which are source code and bytecode, extracted using decompilation and disassembly operations, and these are the results of this experiment. So the average response time, if we compare the different existing tools with blotlibd on average response time, the average response time of blotlibd was 38.98 seconds, which was much less than libd, which was 100.92 seconds, but it was higher than LightRadar and LibScout. But if we compare in terms of storage, blotlibd achieved the smallest storage requirement, which was 1.52 MBs, and libd was much higher than in comparison to this, which because it was 12.59 MBs. So one important point to note over here was that the other tools are based on whitelists, and so we considered the size of the whitelists which were provided along with these tools for comparison. So accuracy, which was an important metric over here, because we just saw over here that if we see on the basis of average response time, one may say that blotlibd is not performing good in comparison to LibScout and LightRadar. But an important metric over here is that whether it is performing accurately also or not. So if you see over here, you'll see that blotlibd has a 99% of accuracy, and in comparison to LibScout and LightRadar, they have very much less accuracy values, because LightRadar has 68.97%, whereas LibScout has 25.23%. So essentially accuracy is very important for us. We need the output to be correct. So in those terms, blotlibd surpasses the other tools which exist. And the improvement, if we compare, so therefore we compare blotlibd with libd only, because it has a considerable amount of accuracy. If you see over here, 85%. So therefore response time, we would say it achieves 61.92% improvement over libd. Storage, it achieves 86.97% improvement over libd, and accuracy it achieves 74.5% over LibScout. So it does also achieves a small amount of improvement in comparison to libd. So therefore we would say that blotlibd outperforms all the existing tools. Then we also performed additional experiments in order to tune PVA parameters, as we just discussed. So the effect of input parameters on PVA and the threshold similarity scores was determined over here. So we come to a conclusion that similarity increases with the increase in training samples, and it increases to a certain extent of increase in epochs and vector size, but then it starts decreasing. So that is the point where we need to find out the threshold values of epochs and vector size. So therefore this was a final step to find out the threshold values and the similarity thresholds. So the similarity thresholds has been marked as bold over here. So basically for bytecode we take the threshold as 0.9911, and for source code we take the threshold as 0.98359. Anything above this threshold is marked as non-bloat, and anything below this threshold or below, let's say 60% of similarity, is considered to be as a bloat. Okay, and another thing is optimal PVA parameters. So optimal PVA parameters are these: epoch size. The optimal epoch size was obtained as 10, and vectors were the best vectors with which we achieved the best performance was 5, and the entire training samples were taken as the optimal training sample size, as we saw that the accuracy only improved by increase in the training samples. So that's all for this presentation. Thank you very much, and now I'm up for questions.